love that intro. Solid. Awesome. So great to be here. I actually lived about 5 blocks from here for 20 years before moving to San Francisco, so it's pretty nice. I want to get started asking anyone here if they can tell me, take a guess as to what this is. Anyone? No guesses? I'll tell you. No guesses? Okay. This is the cover of a 1960s report on speech recognition from the IBM TJ Watson Center. The reason I bring it up, just to bring a little bit of perspective, that we, the scientists, the engineers, the brilliant minds, have been working 60 years on getting this right, to the magic moment when you see a human having a natural conversation with a bot or with a computer. Now, in the 60s, they had awesome strides. They didn't quite get there. So let me just take you to 1999. I'm a freshman in college, and I'm doing my summer internship. I did my summer internship at IBM TJ Watson Center in Yorktown Heights. And I remember my first day, I walked into the cafeteria, and I just remember seeing a sea of just white hair as far as the eye could see. And I mean, I was 20, so I thought that probably most likely I was the youngest person under the age of what seemed to be like 75. I'm sure that's not true, but that's how it felt. That was the first thing that I got out of that internship. The second part, I got to work under the team of Dr. Nahamu. He's considered the father of speech recognition. He's been working on it since the 80s. Until last year, he was the global CTO of IBM for speech recognition. And I was under one of his teams in text-to-speech. And later I learned in 2006 that IBM pulled the plug on that because the technology wasn't, amazing strides, right? IBM is an incredible leader, but they couldn't get to the point, the technology wasn't there to get them to the point where you have that natural conversation between a human and a bot. So that takes me to the next date, important date, 2018. Probably most of you remember this. This is Google's I.O. last year, and they featured Duplex. A bot is calling and setting up a hair appointment, and the bot sounds perfectly human. It breathes like a human. It talks like a human. It takes pauses like a human. The other person on the line has no idea that it's a human, so it's that good. And in many ways, this year, 2018, last year, Google was firing the first shot to the race of building voice bots or commercial voice bots for sales, service, and marketing calls specifically, among the many other thousands of applications, right? So that's a big year. And that takes us to today, which I'll be talking about how companies can leverage voice bots for sales marketing calls to develop, to build that ROI. So my name is Ricardo Garcia-Amaya. I am the founder of VoIQ. We're a platform that helps businesses build voice bots, deploy voice bots for sales, marketing, and service calls campaigns. I want to talk about 3 things today. The first one, I want to go under the hood. I want just to get a little bit of appreciation of what makes a voice bot a successful product to make very successful calls, service, marketing, and sales calls. Then I want to be able to share a handful of use cases of how sales and marketing leaders are using the many amazing features of voice bots to generate ROI, and hopefully you guys can get inspired and go back to the sales and marketing teams in your companies and share those with them. And lastly, I want to share two. I'm Colombian, so we say a couple and we literally mean 2, but that's not true in the English language. I have 2 use cases that I'll share with of 2 specific companies that we work with, the way that they generate ROI based on leveraging these voice bots. And again, hopefully you guys walk out with a couple of awesome ideas on how to build that ROI in your own companies. Usually there are a couple of people in the audience that are saying, oh, okay, robocalls is here comes voice bots, kind of robocalls on steroids, but there's nothing farther from the truth, and we'll be able to go through that through the presentation. So let's go straight, take a look under the hood. And this is a Chatbot Conference. We're familiar with the most common form of a conversational chatbot. It sits on the lower right-hand corner. You enter an input of text, and it goes through natural language understanding, and you get an output of text, right, with hopefully the right answer. So thanks to that technology, we have the conversational chatbot. Now, what do we need to get it to a voice bot or voice assistant on the consumer end? Well, we need a layer of speech recognition. As I mentioned, took 60 years to get here, so thanks to that, thanks to the fact that we have AI, now these two technologies actually start working together, and you can actually have what most of you know as the Google Assistant or Alexa in your living room, in your kitchen. So, how do we make a voice bot make a call? We need one more layer, and that is the programmable telecom layer. Now, this wasn't always around either. If you go 2010 and back, only big telecommunication companies could build applications. And not until the past 10, 15 years, you have companies like Amazon, Twilio, Nexmo opening it up. And now any engineer from their bedroom can write through lines of code amazing enterprise level telecommunication applications. So that last layer allows us to have a voice bot. In this case, let's just call it a voice assistant on the consumer end that can actually make calls. And now we're talking about Google I/O this year. What is it, a week ago, 2 weeks ago? Where you can have your voice bot make calls on your behalf to set up restaurant reservations, right? So now we know what a consumer voice bot can do with all these technologies, and for the consumer, it works for you, right? So what if you are a business, an enterprise, and you want to leverage voice bots for sales, marketing, and service calls? Well, to give you an idea what I mean, if you are a business and you want some solution for chatbot automation, you can find companies like Drift and 100 others, probably now 1,000 others, are companies that focus on just chatbot automation. If you're looking for email automation, same thing. Right now, I mean, you can go for a company like Outreach, or you can, or the other 100 other very successful, amazing email automation tools. When it comes to voice bot call automation, not until the beginning of this year you had any alternative. We're the first company that focused on marketing, sales, and service calls through voice bots. And there will be tens, if not hundreds, of these companies in this space coming up over the next year, 5 years, et cetera. So the sales and marketing voice bot platform leverages these core infrastructure, these core technologies. In a platform, anybody who has carried out, or led any teams of salespeople on the phone, has anybody had that experience here? Raise your hand. Okay, how was it? Awesome? It's painful? Yes, usually it's extremely painful and it's extremely difficult. In order to get a sales or marketing call campaign, you need to optimize a series of criteria to get it right. It's extremely difficult to deal with this with unpredictable humans. And we set out to build a platform, like a spaceship, that basically tackles all of these. With the predictability of VoiceBot, we could do it. However, we had to start from some of the things that sound extremely simple, but they're extremely complex problems. So I'm going to go over a couple of things that a VoiceBot platform just takes care of that you don't have to think about. A voice bot does not know the difference between a ringing tone or hitting a voicemail when you're calling somebody, or even worse, an IVR. So an IVR is the hi, you reach the offices of Dr. Jones, press 1 for this, press 2 for that. So a platform actually allows you to navigate through all of these, so you don't have to start from scratch with your voice bot. This is a common one. If you're new to voice bots and you want to launch voice bots that make calls, you can launch, let's say, 5,000 calls, and then you quickly realize that 25% of them were in the Pacific and PST time zone, and you just woke up people at 5 a.m. and they're not going to be really happy with your brand, right? So these are some of the things that a platform takes care of automatically. This is another case, updating lead information. So when you hit somebody and they don't have it's the wrong number, a voice bot just want to continue having a conversation and they don't know what happened. So a platform will say, okay, this person is not who we thought. We need to not call her and make sure we flag it as a bad data. Handling unexpected questions as well. Voice bots just want to have a conversation. they're not really ready to handle unexpected questions. This is not so unexpected. This is typical. Like someone might say, "Hi, is this Linda?" And they say yes, and maybe they say, "Who is this?" Right? So the answer varies not by the company, but by the many type of campaigns. Anybody who's done sales and marketing campaigns, you know that you can launch just like anybody who's launched email campaigns, right? You don't launch one email campaign per company. You have multiple products, multiple geographies, multiple teams. You have thousands of different campaigns. For VoiceBots, it's the same thing, and you need to train them per campaign. So that's something that a platform addresses for you. This is an interesting one. This is, sorry, I can't talk right now. Again, they sound super simple. If you have humans, you don't have to think about it. But with VoiceBots, you do, and these are actually pretty big problems. Sorry, I can't talk right now. It doesn't mean I'm not interested or I am interested. It means not now. Call me later. So a platform will understand that, and will call that person later. So no human interaction. It'll just do it for you. And this is one of my favorite ones that are probably one of the scariest things to hear for somebody who leads teams of making calls on your behalf, or if you have teams in the Philippines or whatever they are, right? One of the scariest things is to outsource this job, or have somebody walk into your office and say, "Greg, do you remember that list of 10,000 or whatever, 5,000 calls? They're called," right? And as a manager, you're more interested in knowing, okay, but what happened in those calls, right? Who do we call? What did they say? Who confirmed? Who answered? What attempt? At what time? What objections? What questions, right? That's the whole point of a campaign. It's like sending one email campaign and not learning anything from it, right? You learn over the course of sending multiple campaigns. So that's what a platform helps you solve. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a appreciation of what goes into a successful VoiceBot launching, marketing, sales, and service campaigns, cold campaigns rather. So the second thing, I want to share some use cases and how some sales and marketing leaders are leveraging awesome features in VoiceBots. So the first feature is human sounding. So the reason I say that, right now there are tens, potentially we're going to get to hundreds of companies that just focus on one thing, and that is creating voices for VoiceBots. And when you buy these voices, they're human. They sound like a human, but they don't sound perfectly human. You can get them there, but you need to train it, right? So taking it back to the Google I/O last year, in order to get that VoiceBot to sound perfectly human, they spent 4 months with several engineers just making sure that VoiceBot could do one thing and one thing only, and that is to call and set up a hair appointment, right? So now you can do that. It won't take you, several engineers from Google in 4 months, but you can do it in hours or days. And over the next year, very likely will come sounding perfectly human, to start breathing like a human, taking pauses, etc. But you will always have to train it according to the campaign that you're launching. Second, one really interesting thing, we found no correlation between someone hanging up the phone because it's a VoiceBot. The reason why people hang up the phone is highly correlated with the fact that you don't have the right ICP, the ideal customer profile. So that is the correlation, not the fact that it's a VoiceBot. And I'll tell you why that is the VoiceBot is able to have not perfect, yeah, it's a conversational over the phone. But not only that, but it's much richer because it's tied in from your CRM, right? Very different from, I just had this conversation with somebody outside, very different from a inbound bot when you need to guess what is it that people need. An outbound sales and marketing call, you are just pre-qualifying somebody and you're the one asking the questions. So it's way more narrow. So there's less room for error when using a VoiceBot. In an outbound fashion. So another cool, this is an example, let's say Karen filled, this is a real type of customer example. Car insurance has a page, a form, a marketing form where they got somewhere around 500,000 to 1 million people every month asking for car insurance. They need to qualify them. They don't want to qualify them with 100 questions. They want to ask them 3, and then they have a VoiceBot that calls them right after they fill out the form to ask him 2 additional questions. In this case, "Hi Karen, we just want to make sure that your Toyota Camry, how many miles does it have, right?" And so that's further pre-qualifying somebody without using a human. Now, another awesome feature in the same example is once she says, "Yeah, no, it doesn't have over 150,000, it has 90,000 miles," The voice bot says, great, let me introduce you to, do you have time? And I can introduce you to somebody just to take care of this car insurance, right? So you can transfer to a human or a sales agent. This is another voice cloning, one of the coolest things that are happening right now. This is an example of a use case. Real estate agents, they spend 80% of the time outside of their office. They hate wasting their time with people not showing up to their open houses, et cetera. So they can leverage a voice bot with their own voice to call their prospects and remind them to show up, or confirm that they show up and they get a text knowing whether they will show up or not. So this is one of the things that they don't like doing, but they would love to be able to solve. That's one of the areas. This is another way that you can use it with a brand. You can have the gecko from Geico will be able to call you and say, hi Josh, congratulations mate, you've been approved, right? So this is yet another huge example of what you'll probably be seeing soon enough. You can have the most interesting men in the world selling Dos Equis to restaurants and bars around the world. So those are the type of things. Some of the easier things is, easier or everyday things, schedule and rescheduling. Anybody who does sales demos, you know that industry standard is 50% of people show up. You can get it to 75% if you call them, if you use an additional channel other than email. That's whether you use humans or voice bots. The cool thing is with voice bots, you don't actually do anything. It just happens by itself. The voice bots call people that are about to show to a demo, or the people that did not show up to a demo, it calls them to help reschedule that demo without salespeople having to do that job. Trigger workflow, so VoiceBot can trigger automatically themselves. So let's say you want to send a campaign of 10,000 emails. You want to have a VoiceBot call only the people that open the email and click on a link. You can have a VoiceBot do that, right? To further maybe introduce that person to somebody else at the moment that they have the highest level of attention. You can train it to handle objections, oh, I can't afford it right now, or like, oh, we already use your competitor. You can train the VoiceBot to do that. Analytics, reporting, huge. Every VoiceBot is 100% predictable, so you're able to capture everything in real time. You know exactly what's happening. You have live QA, so the QA will tell the lead, the sales or marketing lead exactly where it is, what type of objections are coming up, et cetera, how to make it stronger, the campaign in the future, and tens of other amazing features. One of the coolest one in the future, live online demos. So if you sell a $10,000 product, you're gonna have a human doing that live demo. But if you sell a product for $100, $200, now you can actually afford having a voice bot doing a live online demo for you. And that's coming up over the next 3-4 years. Lastly, case study. 2 case studies. I'm gonna run through this. How am I doing in time? Okay. Okay, good. So these are the 2 use cases, case studies, the way the 2 companies leverage voice bots to generate ROI. The first one, I'll just say, is one of the largest car hailing company. They also do food delivery. And the way that they went to market in the United States, they needed to have 2 teams, one creating a list of 500,000 restaurants, the other one calling them. And they needed to pre-qualify them with 3 questions. One is, first, make sure that the restaurant exists. Second, whether they offer delivery. And third, whether they have multiple locations. These were the 3 questions they need to do. They actually did it in the US. Yes, it was extremely expensive, but more importantly, it took time for a company venture-backed that they're more interested in time rather than money. Now, they needed to expand in Latin America, and they decided to go with the same playbook. Now, the smaller number of restaurants, but the same type of calls, right? Now, one of the issues, and they have humans making these calls, that's how they started, and one of the issues is they're calling, auto body shops instead of restaurants. They're calling restaurants that have been closed for the past 10 years, right? So they were dealing with 30% bad data, and it was really bad. They were wasting their time. So we started working on a pilot campaign in 3 countries. We chose a Rodrigo, a voice of a voice bot that doesn't have a Mexican accent, doesn't have a Spanish accent, it has a neutral Latin American accent, and you're gonna see a ton of voices that, to fit your specific, I don't know if we have voice. Yeah, I don't think we have sound on this one. But yeah, believe me, sounds great. All right, so then we built a campaign with those questions that they needed to ask. To pre-qualify them, the reports in real time, the analytics showed them within 2 weeks exactly what's happening. I mean, it's real time, so it's not like you need to wait for it. And at the end, they save about $25,000 per week by not having humans doing these pre-qualification questions. And also, they got to sign up 15% more. The reason why is you can't call a restaurant during lunchtime, so don't ever try that. I mean, to ask like 3 questions, right? If you call a restaurant, make sure you order. That's the only reason they care, right? Second, when you call and you have 6 questions to get to before selling somebody something, they're gonna hang up on you. But if you have a voice bot pre-qualifying before you have the human actually making the real sale, then you can actually sign up more people. And of course, everything is 100% documented in their CRM, which is something that salespeople are not known for loving, which is documentation, because it's hard and you're not making the sale. So this is my second case study. This is a big healthcare co. That's what we're going to call it. One of the largest websites that provides advice of what type of personal insurance you should select. Until very recently, they bought an insurance company, so they started selling insurance themselves. They ran into an issue, which is that people were not renewing their insurance when they needed to. So they developed email reminders, et cetera, that wasn't really quite working, and they decided, you know what, let's test this. The internal team jumped on the phones and start calling people as they were starting to expire, and suddenly they saw the needle move, and they said, okay, does that mean that we're gonna have to build a team, or what are we gonna do? So luckily, they were using HubSpot as their CRM, and they started looking, and they found us on the integration page. After 2 minutes, they were integrated with us. They already had a workflow, because they had these emails ready to set up, remind people as soon as they get expired. And all they did is create a voice bot inside HubSpot that followed, and they mapped it in a way that these people would be called to confirm whether they're going to renew or remind them. And at the end, well, they didn't have to build a team of humans to do this, so it cost them a ton less than actually having humans doing it. And also, they increased the customer retention rate, because when people are making calls, they will not make 100% of the calls that they need to do, and they won't do them at the right time with the right cadence. A voice bot will do that every single time. So that's how you can actually get better results. There's a bunch of different case studies, examples of how they're being used in other industries. This is IDC says 30% of enterprises will use voice bots to power marketing, sales, and service by 2022. So I hope that today that this inspire you to take it back to sales, marketing, service, and start using voice bots, and hopefully be one of these 30% of enterprises who will be using it over the next years. Thank you. This is my email. Anything, shoot me an email, and I'll be here to talk. Thank you very much.